All right, welcome back here to our second AT week. So today we have Maggie Mahoney, an assistive technology practitioner and founder of GraspAT. She specializes in AAC and alternative access. Her passion for this industry began in university, where she learned how technology could be used to bridge the independence gap for people with disabilities. Following a rewarding career in the clinical sector as a rehabilitation engineer, she transitioned to the commercial side of the AT industry. For the last 10 years, Maggie has worked with many of the leading AT and ACC companies in both the United States and Europe. All right, and I'll go ahead and pass it over to Maggie.
Hi, excellent. Thank you, Ray. And I'm really happy to be here, not only because I am, let me just get my PowerPoint going, not only because I'm passionate about assistive technology. I've also worked with this chapter, the ALS chapter of Maryland, DC, and Virginia previously. So it has a special place in my heart. So Ray had asked me to talk about alternative computer access today. So that's what we'll dive into. As Ray mentioned, my name is Maggie, and I'm a rehabilitation engineer by trade and have specialized most of my career in assistive technology. So a little bit about myself, in addition to what Ray shared about me in the AT world. I did start my career out as a clinician in a hospital setting where I worked in conjunction with a multidisciplinary team, including doctors and speech therapists and physical therapists and occupational therapists. And my role was as a rehabilitation engineer. So it was a really rewarding experience because we worked with people of all ages and all disabilities. And in the hospital, we had a shop. So what I was able to do as an engineer was see clients and be able to design and manufacture and build their piece of technology right in the hospital. So we were able to provide customized wheelchair seating and positioning and computer access and develop and make switches from scratch. So it was a really fun and rewarding experience. In my time there, I received my certification from RESNA for assistive technology provider, which was important to me to be credentialed to be able to make these appropriate recommendations for folks. But as Ray mentioned, I then moved to the commercial sector and then spent the last 15 years in and out of working with the commercial sector. So I worked with AT and AAC companies in the United States as well as Europe, and day in and day out we would be providing those specific technologies to end users. So really we're able to understand the needs and requirements of users for assistive technologies. Upon my return to the United States, I started GraspAT Assistive Technologies. And this is our platform for providing some niche equipment to customers, as well as consulting and training. So my interest always throughout that career has been in accessing technology. And if that is specific computer access or also mounting. So how are we going to physically position these pieces of equipment so folks can access it? So now, as I've segued my career, I've really specialized and focused on computer access, and whether that's kind of electrical computer items or how to position the computer or these items for folks to access it. So when I came back from Europe, I realized there was a gap in the American market for assistive technologies that we were using in Europe and England. And when I came back to the States, I tried to get my hands on this equipment, and they either weren't available or weren't readily available. And so that was one of the reasons I started GraspAT. I wanted to bring in these really great technologies that were hard to access here and then provide them to folks in the States with, our American style service and support. I didn't want to bring in a piece of equipment from Finland and then customers needing to call Finland for service and support. So all that now comes through Gras. So we provide the equipment, these specialized niche access methods specifically, and then we are providing also the service and support. So one of the really important things for me starting this business was to partner with companies that really shared the same values. So it was really important for me to have the best pieces of technology, but also work with these customers that were going to have the same values and passion for what we do. So these are a handful of the companies that we partner with, and we're really proud to do so. So Ray had asked me to talk about computer access, and we do a lot of niche computer access. So I'm going to talk today about the things that access methods that are really of interest to me and that I think are valuable to this population. So we provide some, but I'm also going to talk about some access methods that Gras doesn't necessarily provide, but I think it's really valuable for people to know. And we at Gras are happy to be a resource for any of these pieces of equipment. So first I want to start with Stylus. When we think about computer access, sometimes we want to think about direct selecting, right? Direct selecting, I would use my finger to touch, for example, a touch screen or an iPad. I would use a traditional computer mouse to access my computer. So we want to keep folks direct selecting as long as we can, because that's going to be the quickest way to access something. So I see something on my iPad and I'm going to touch it and I'm going to access it. Well, sometimes that becomes difficult. So I want to just start with Stylus. And if you can see on the screen here, this is my colleague, Amy Roman, who is an expert in this field. She's a speech and language pathologist in San Francisco. But you see her accessing the iPad with a homemade stylus. So that's just a piece of PVC pipe with, a pencil drilled into it. So if I had decreased hand function and wasn't able to isolate a finger to accurately access a tablet, I could use a stylus. So there's homemade stylus. There's ones that you can buy. If you can see the one I'm positioning here. So it's just going to enable me to keep direct selecting. So I think stylus are a great thing just to know and be aware of out there. The next thing I want to talk about are different type of mouses like trackballs, touchpads, and joysticks. So again, if I had difficulty accessing a traditional mouse, and that might be for accessing just a standard computer use or accessing a communication aid, there's kind of off-the-shelf things you can buy on Amazon, as well as more adapted AT equipment that are going to allow you to continue mouse access. So the top photo here is just a trackpad. So most of the time laptops include a trackpad, and I'm able to just have limited finger movement and be able to move my cursor around the screen. If access to that trackpad became difficult, for example, I couldn't position my hands appropriately to the screen, or I'm sitting in a wheelchair, there's too much distance. This is a nice little portable trackpad. So I can move this trackpad and maybe position it on my wheelchair armrest, or maybe position it on my lap. So there's things like this that you can just buy and then still have access to whatever computer you were using, but just allowing mouse access to be easier. Then we want to look at other type of joysticks. So you'll see this one with the yellow trackball here. If I was having limited hand movement and couldn't access a small mouse, but still had good shoulder movement, I could maybe use my hand to move this trackball which would then allow me to use the mouse cursor and access the computer. Again, this trackball can be used with your hand. I have a lot of folks who will position this trackball under their foot, and so then are using movement of their foot to access mouse cursors. You can also plug switches into this trackball. So if I was using this with my foot, I could move the trackball with my foot. And then when I got to an object I wanted, I could hit the switch to select. And we'll talk more about the selection process in a bit here. Moving to this unit on the bottom, it looks just like a wheelchair joystick, but there's a piece of equipment called the B-Joy ring, which will allow me, for example, if I am driving a wheelchair and I still have the ability to use the wheelchair joystick, this is a small piece of equipment that just sits in between the joystick knob. And then it then allows me to change my wheelchair joystick into computer movement. So I really like this piece of equipment because if I'm already using a wheelchair and I'm already driving accurately, I can just slip in this piece of equipment and not have to have an additional joystick or an additional mouse control, which is nice because, you know, as you start adding equipment on, things can become bulky and heavy. And this just allows me to kind of streamline both my wheelchair driving and computer access. On the right here, you see another little small joystick as well. So it's just a small kind of trackpad embedded in the middle. And even with very slight finger movement, I can have mouse emulations. So this is just a selection of examples of different joysticks. Again, many of the gaming joysticks that you might have for just computer use could be good examples and good uses here as well. Then I want to move to head tracking. So this is something you all might have heard about or will see in the future. There's ways, if I had limited movement of my hands or other extremities to access the computer, yet I had good head movement, we can access a computer with that head movement. So there's lots of systems out there. Again, I'm just going to pinpoint on a few of them here. There's ones that are camera based. So this one on the left is not a product that we carry, but it's the Head Mouse Nano, and it's a camera that sits on top of your computer. And then you wear a reflective dot on your face. And sometimes you wear it right in the middle of your head, or potentially, since I'm wearing glasses, I might stick the sticker there. And the camera is going to track that reflection dot. And so as I move my head, I then am going to move the cursor around the screen. So again, a really good option for those who have good head movement. The nice thing about these head devices as well is that you can usually set the speeds and the calibration. So even if I had very limited head movement, I'm still able to access the computer with the mouse. So these cameras just kind of sit on top of your computer. One thing with camera-based system is that that camera has to see you. So most of the time I do have to be positioned or have the device positioned so it can accurately see me. So you might have some limitations of how you can sit or how you have the device positioned so it can see you at all times. There's also softwares out there that also do head and face recognition as well. And so you'll see on the right, a company called Smile. It has the Smile mouse that it's camera based as well. So you're going to use the camera embedded in your system or an additional web camera, and it's going to track certain areas of your face. So your head, you can see here, it's seeing your eyebrows and your mouth. And with their fancy algorithm, as you move your head, it's going to translate that into mouse movements. This Smile mouse, actually, we're going to talk about selection in a bit here, but you move your head, and then when you want to choose something, with a traditional hand mouse, you would choose something by clicking. But if you were using your head to move the mouse clicker, in here, you would smile and that would activate a click. Or you can plug in other type of switches, which we'll get into later for clicking. So there's great head and facial recognition. A lot of this is software based. There's some free softwares here. I know Apple in their latest iOS has also embedded that into some of their iPads. So again, a resource that you might want to look into if you want to access the computer with your head. So these head tracking are all camera based. There's other head tracking that works on a gyroscope. So a gyroscope is a sophisticated sensor that measures speed and rotation in space. So there's units out there, and one particular one that GraspAT supports and that we've had really great success with is called the Cuazono. So you wear this sensor, and the nice thing about this device is that you can wear it on your head. So if you have good head movement, you might want to wear it on your head, but you can wear this sensor on any part of your body. So I have users who wear it on their leg, or users who have hand movement who will position on their hand. And as you move that sensor, and that sensor is measuring speed and rotation in space, it moves the mouse cursor on the screen. So I'm going to play a little video that describes how this technology works.
Welcome to Kuha's Technology Showcase. This video will explain what makes Cuazono a computer access device capable of making computer usage available to everyone. Cuazono consists of a gyroscopic air mouse and a USB receiver. The receiver plugs into a USB port on any computer, and the air mouse replaces the normal mouse. An advanced gyroscope is used to measure the orientation of the air mouse. When the orientation is changed, the gyroscope senses the motion and translates it into a corresponding mouse cursor movement. This information is then transmitted wirelessly to the USB receiver. The integrated gyroscope is so precise that even the smallest motion can be registered. Zono can also understand any direction as movement, and by doing so, liberate the user to freely choose the way he or she would like to use Zono. Zono is barely the size of a matchbox and weighs only 23 grams with the battery included. This makes it the lightest air mouse in the world. Zono has a wireless range of 10 meters, and it can be used non-stop for over 30 hours with just a single charge. These small dimensions and the long battery life, combined with the accuracy and flexibility of the gyroscope, make it possible to attach Zono anywhere on the user's body and to use it in a multitude of ways. For more information, please visit Kuha's website at www.kuha.com.
Okay. Sorry, I paused, I think, the screen sharing instead of the video there, but I believe I'm back. So that's the Cuazono. So I'm just going to demonstrate it here. So it consists of the transmitter, where again, I mentioned you can wear this any place on your body. Most of our folks are wearing it on some position on their head. So I have it on the headband here. Because I wear eyeglasses, I could just pop it on my eyeglasses here, but it consists of the transmitter and the receiver. So this is just a USB receiver. So the nice thing about it not being camera based is that I can plug in this receiver into any computer, and you can now use it with laptops and iPhones and Android devices. So it's multi-platform, but it's wireless, and it sends via radio link. So I don't necessarily need to be in front of the computer. So that's really nice because it gives me lots of flexibility for positioning. So if I'm in a wheelchair and I needed to tilt or recline my wheelchair for positioning needs, and I can still see my computer, I can still access it with the Kuazono. So there's no line of sight. You could be using it upright to access your computer, and then you can move your head. And if you had a receiver plugged into your smart TV, you could access Netflix or something on another computer. So it allows really great options for positioning. It's also plug and play. So right out of the box, I can plug into my computer and start using it. So we've had really great success with the Kuazono just because it gives you so much flexibility. It's also super accurate. So again, you can set it up so that even if I have only very limited head movement, I can access the computer, and it's very pixel specific. So I can really zoom in. We have clients who are using it with AutoCAD and Excel, so it allows me to access most, if not any, computer programs very, very accurately. So we've been talking a lot about moving that mouse cursor. Again, you can do that via your head. You can do it with adapted mice, joysticks, trackballs. But the next question usually is, well, okay, I have movement of the mouse, but now how do I click? So when we move away from a traditional mouse and clicking with the buttons there, when we move to something adaptive, we usually have to tell the computer how I want to select. So with most devices out here, like the Kuazono or the head mouse or eye gaze, which we'll quickly get into next, is I can select with a switch. So I can find what I want with head movement and then hit some type of switch. And a switch might be a puff of air, it might be a button, or there's things called on-screen keyboards. So I'm going to be moving my head to move that mouse cursor, and then I can use, and there's a few on the market, these are two that I really like and recommend, different on-screen keyboards, which will allow me to do all the computer functions that I might with my fingers, like that left click, right click, double click. So there's small pieces of this one on the left here is called Dwell Clicker 2 by Smartbox. And it's a small piece of software that docks on your screen. And this is where you tell your cursor what you want to do. So if I wanted to double click on something, I would first choose the double click icon. And then I would go to the icon I wanted to double click with my head, and I would let it dwell there for a certain amount of time that you would select, and then the computer would double click. So these on-screen keyboards are going to allow you to do all of those mouse functions. So Dwell Clicker 2 on the left here is really kind of a nice, very clean and simple on-screen keyboard. On the right here, you'll see Kua Dwell, and Kua Dwell comes with the latest Kua device, but you can also use Kua Dwell with any mice out there. The difference between this software is that most on-screen keyboards, you have to pick a location on your screen for it to dock and sit. The Kua Dwell software actually moves around with your mouse. So then I don't have to access all different parts of the screen. This small piece of software just travels with your mouse cursor. And right underneath it is where you would decide if you wanted to single click, double click, left click, right click. So with most adapted mice, you're going to have to figure out a way to click. Again, you can use physical switches, which I'll get into next, or there's lots of pieces of on-screen keyboards, and these are just two that we recommend. Next, I want to talk about eye tracking, and I think there was a session about eye tracking earlier in this week for probably communication access. But when we're thinking about computer access, we have a lot of folks who don't need access to communication software, but need computer access and who only can use eye movement. And so you can use eye tracking for just computer access. You can also use eye tracking in conjunction with communication software and have a full eye tracking AAC system. So on the left here, you'll see standalone eye trackers. And these are really nice for folks who might not need a dedicated communication aid, but just for computer access, because you can plug these into most tablets. For example, the Tobii eye tracker at the bottom, you can plug into, for example, a Surface Pro or any other type of computer. And then are you using your eyes as the mouse cursor? Again, you'll have to have a way to click and select, but you're going to translate eye movement into mouse cursor movement. On the top here, you're going to see this new unit from iRespond. It's a partner of ours in Spain, and they've just developed a multi-platform eye tracker that you can use on iPads, tablets, Surface Pros. So the eye tracking, the standalone eye tracking, you're kind of needing to piece together your system. I think you can also purchase these through some manufacturers throughout the States with a Surface or with a tablet and the eye tracker. Want to comment here specifically for eye tracking, but all of the equipment is that we need to mount this equipment too, so you can access it appropriately. It's great to have an eye gaze device, but if that eye gaze device or that head mouse, camera-based head mouse is not mounted so it's seeing you, you're going to really fight the system. So it's really important to get the piece of technology that's going to work for your abilities, but also that it's mounted appropriately so you can access it. So there's great, standalone eye tracking devices that would allow for computer access. And on the right-hand side here, you're going to see integrated eye gaze devices. So, manufacturers like Control Bionics and Tobii Dynavox and PRC and SmartBox are all going to provide systems that have eye tracking built into it. These are really great systems as well, because most of the time you can start with, for example, a grid pad here on the right, and you might be using direct select, and then your needs might change where you want to try a head mouse, and then you can move to eye gaze should your needs and conditions require that. So eye tracking is a great computer access method. Then I want to move to switches, and switches can be used standalone to scan systems, but I find that switches are also really beneficial to use in conjunction with these other pieces of technology that I just talked about. So there are hundreds of different type of switches out there, and you can get them from many manufacturers. I'll just talk about a few that have been really successful for our team working with clients with ALS. Want to talk about our Pico finger switch. And so it's a really sensitive switch that's embedded into a Velcro-like piece of fabric here. And so I have lots of folks who use this maybe with a thumb or one of their fingers, and use it in conjunction with maybe something like a Kuozono or an eye gaze system. So it requires very limited activation force. And I would, for example, if I was using a Kuozono for computer access, I could move my head to move that mouse cursor, and when I got to the object I wanted, I just could click. So when you're using some of these mice, it's sometimes nice to use a switch, because then everything's on your time. You can find these, you can read the web page, you can find the link you want to activate, and then you activate on your own time versus using some type of dwell software that's on the computer's time. So the Pico finger button is a switch that I just love. Again, other switches out there, button style. Those can be big or they can be small, positioned anywhere on your body or wheelchair. There's also different type of sip and puff switches. Grasp actually supports a few models of puff switches, and you can use those in conjunction with a head mouse or eye gaze or Kuozono. So you would move your head or eyes to the object you wanted on the computer, and then just with a small puff of air, you're able to single click, double click, left click, right click, click and drag. Making the selection process on your time versus the computer's time. And that is a really sensitive, contactless way to select. And then I just have a picture of the NeuroNo down there just to represent, there's very sensitive EMG switches out there that can be positioned anywhere on the body. So even when you have limited movement, there's pieces of equipment out there that can help you activate. So I talked about using these switches in conjunction with these other access methods. Switches can also just be used standalone. So if my only ability was to click a switch, I can still have computer access. I would use some type of software program that would allow me to scan my computer. It would allow me to scan my communication device. So I just hit the switch to activate what I want on the screen. Again, sometimes scanning is slower and more laborious than direct selecting. Again, we're trying to keep folks direct selecting as long as possible, whether that be with a stylus, whether that be with their eyes. But if I have to scan systems, I can just use a switch. And let me tell you, I have folks who use just single switches and scan their computer and do it really fast and accurate. So there's lots and lots of options out there for computer access. And throughout this, I talked about the combination of the equipment, and that's where we're finding really great success. So on the left here, you see this gentleman using the Kuozono head mouse with the puff switch. And then that allows him to be very accurate. On the right here, and I think there was a presentation by Control Bionics previously, and they have a system called the Trilogy where they integrate all these access methods as well. So you can use the touch screen or you can use eye gaze in conjunction with their muscle switch. And again, allowing for a really accurate system. And it's really great these days. When I first started, you had to choose one manufacturer and kind of get all the equipment from them. But now most of this equipment, eye gaze systems can work with all sorts of computers, with all sorts of software. All of this technology really integrates nicely together, allowing users really to pick what's going to work best for them. What's the best communication software for me? What's the best hardware? What's the best access method? How am I going to get it mounted and positioned? And so today there's really great options for integrating and combining all of these pieces of equipment. So lastly, I just want to talk about exploring options. I've only commented on, a very small fraction of all the available equipment out there. Again, there's lots of free or no cost options. Things that are fundable or do require a purchase. Most providers like myself at Grasp will provide loans. So if you wanted to see if a head mouse, a Kuozono, or a switch might be appropriate for you, you can always reach out to the manufacturers and see if there's loan options. A lot of the software that I talked about, the Kuodwell and the Dwell Clicker 2 and the Smile mice, if it's software driven, there's usually trial periods of the software where you can download the software and try it for 30 to 90 days. And there's also availability of AT equipment from loan libraries. So every state has an AT loan library that's funded by federal funds. And most of the time they will have a collection of equipment that you might be able to loan. And then there's services like the ALS Association, who quite often have programs and services where they can loan equipment to make sure that you're going to choose a piece of technology that's going to meet your needs today and then also down the road. So that's just a little bit about me and Grasp and the equipment that we've been really successful using and that we're interested in. So I'm happy to take any questions from the group, but I'm also including our contact information. So please feel free to reach out to us. You can explore the website for the equipment we provide, but also want to be a resource here. Our team has years of experience in the field, and we're really happy to be a resource to the ALS chapter as well as you all. So thank you very much.
I have a question. Could you just talk about if do you guys have any voice control options for PCs, or just what you feel like would be good recommendations?
Yeah, we don't have voice control options, but of course that, those are options. So a lot of the dictate. So if you did have good speech, there's a lot of programs out there that would allow you to use your voice to access the computer. Usually there's a little bit of a training period in there where you kind of train the computer your voice, and then you would use voice to activate computer movements. You can use voice to activate environmental control systems. So if you needed to turn the lights on, you could say, once you train the system, lights on, and your lights can turn on, as well as using your voice to do all of the computer controls.
Do you have anything else to add?
No, be in touch with us if we can be of any assistance.
All right. And then, so thank you so much for the presentation. So thank you again, Maggie.
My pleasure. Take care.
Thanks.